And with that, I give the call to the Assistant Minister for Climate Change and Energy. The Minister has the call.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, the government believes that Australia's future should include Australian manufacturing, and we believe that Australia should shape its own future. I don't think either of those propositions are particularly surprising. I think those are propositions that will be broadly supported right across the Australian community. Australia should be a place that makes things. We have been in the past, we should be in the future. And Australia should be a nation that can shape the way that we proceed into the 21st century, not have a different kind of future inflicted on us, not be at the mercy of the change that is inevitable, not miss out on opportunities or fall behind. It is strange that those opposites say no to all of those things. It's strange that those opposites say no to Australian manufacturing, that they say no to Australia shaping its own future. They in essence say no to the future. That's been a consistent theme of the opposition over the last 2 years. The most consistent theme has been that they say no to everything. They certainly say no to Australian manufacturing. That's not a change in direction for the coalition, for those opposite. In their 9 years of government, they presided over the loss of 100,000 manufacturing jobs in Australia. They dared the Australian car industry to shut up shop and leave, and it did. They say no to Australian innovation and new business opportunities and jobs, no to the investment that we need to sustain those things as part of how we move into and through a period of change. And that would be disastrous for Australia. If Australia ceased to have the capacity to make things, if we cease to have the capacity and take new opportunities to shape our future in the region in which we live, that would affect everyone's prosperity. It would affect households and businesses alike. Change is inevitable, Deputy Speaker, whether it's technological change or climate change or regional change or geopolitical change. Change is inevitable. And if we don't have the steady resolve to manage and embrace change, we will be left behind. We will be left behind as the world moves on. We will see other countries succeed while we miss out. We'll find ourselves less prosperous, less secure and less sustainable. This Future Made in Australia package is something we were very clear about in coming to government. It's something that the Minister and the Prime Minister have worked on, and it has two sensible priorities. The first is the net zero transformation stream, and the second is the economic resilience and security stream. Each has a strong and common sense logic. They are also obviously related. The world is changing as energy systems change and as we deal with the risk and threats and costs of climate change. And the move to a low-carbon economy, a net zero economy, is essential for our well-being. Making sure that that part of the economic and social transition in Australia is properly supported is a vital responsibility of government. The idea that we would abandon that, the idea that we would let Australia be buffeted by the winds of change, by the choices and interests of other nations rather than taking charge of that process is frankly ridiculous. Needless to say, our own economic resilience and security is vital, and it's interesting that the other side of the coalition that does like to beat its chest when it comes to matters of national security seems to take no interest in the challenges of making sure that we are in fact secure in the future when it comes to energy, but when it comes to a number of other parts of our life. So we believe that Australia should control its own future, and that the best way of doing that is to make sure that we step up into and take advantage of the energy transformation and the net zero transformation that countries around the world are rightly focused on, and that we have a good hard look at what it really means to be economically resilient and to have our own sovereign self-sufficient capacity in a range of areas. The pandemic was a reminder of how important that is. It was a reminder that there are tendencies sometimes in the way that we operate economically as part of a global market that don't necessarily put resilience and sovereign self-sufficiency higher enough up the priority list that if you move towards a sort of just-in-time inventory approach, you will find yourselves fragile and vulnerable to supply shocks. Some of those we're still dealing with. But Australia has an enormous amount to look forward to and to benefit from in terms of being a leader when it comes to decarbonisation, renewable energy, storage and energy efficiency. And as we reflect on those lessons of the pandemic, Deputy Speaker, and the challenging nature of our geostrategic circumstances, we are compelled to make sure that we shape our future rather than having that future shape us. And we're going to achieve that by focusing on areas where we do have a competitive advantage and a comparative advantage, and that the member for Herbert, the Speaker before, was somehow suggesting that that won't be the focus of this program, of this bill, and the things that it enables. And of course it will. Of course it will. But as other countries have shown, if you think that those comparative and competitive advantages will just naturally lead to the kinds of transition that we need to see, which are complex, which need to be coordinated, which depend to some degree on investment that comes from outside of Australia. If you think that those things will just happen by themselves, you are kidding yourself. And I don't really know why those opposite would think that. They tried that approach for 9 years. They tried the approach of literally taking their hands off the wheel and letting it spin round and round. And we saw what occurred. We saw that in our energy system. We literally had a decrease of 1 gigawatt of generation capacity during that period of time because there just was no focus or no imperative coming from those opposite to make sure that this country has what it needs. There's talk from those opposite about picking winners as if they question whether our country has any winners, as whether we have any advantages. You can't talk about the importance of comparative advantage and competitive advantage without at least being prepared to see that we have some. And we're blessed, actually, to have the best renewable energy resources in the world. We're blessed with an incredible range of critical minerals, with innovative and entrepreneurial businesses, with talented scientists and researchers, and a kind of energised, highly educated population that actually should be unleashed. That potential should be unleashed in order to enable us to achieve our potential, which is, among other things, to be a renewable energy superpower. And nobody should think that other countries are taking a different approach. The great home of the free market, of entrepreneurialism and technological development in the United States, has not introduced the Inflation Reduction Act and a number of other measures just for fun. They've introduced those measures because they want to make sure that the United States is at the cutting edge of the energy transformation, the net zero economy, and they want to make sure that they don't see a further drift out of manufacturing in that country, with the consequences that it has for their resilience and their self-sufficiency. So if the United States is looking at doing that, of course many other countries, especially throughout the OECD, why would we think that the best approach is to follow what those opposite did for 9 years and literally take your hands off the wheel and do nothing? We're not going to take that approach. We believe Australia deserves to shape its own future. We know that our businesses and our workers and their representatives are ready to be part of that, but they expect leadership from government. They expect government to do its bit. They expect government and our incredibly high quality public service, which those opposite seem to come up to the dispatch box or stand in their seats every day and denigrate as some kind of pastime. All of those parts of what makes Australia distinctively well placed in this time of challenge should be applied to our best interests, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure our investments unlock private investment at scale. That's what has happened through the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. I remember when I was first elected, one of the things of the then coalition government in 2016, middle of 2016, was to once again try and get rid of the CEFC and get rid of ARENA. Two things that the former Labor government established that have been enormously successful, that have delivered a return to the Australian taxpayer while making sure that there is investment for the kind of change and innovation that every economy needs and that we need. We will achieve the change in the two streams I mentioned, Deputy Speaker, by applying community benefit principles. We want to promote safe and secure jobs. We want to deliver skills development and industrial capacity that is flexible and endures. The things that those opposite have put forward as their kind of propositions for maybe achieving a little bit of progress or momentum in these areas are almost the opposite of that. I've heard a number of speakers get up and say, actually, what we need is to make sure that, you know, they use sort of tricky phrases like that wages are competitive and that conditions, working conditions aren't unduly onerous or burdensome. I think Australians see through that. I think that they see through that kind of language, because what the coalition is really saying is they'd like to go back to their approach, which was stagnant or falling real wages and unfair working conditions. That somehow is the one key dynamic element that will generate change. We don't see it that way. We're going to work towards the revitalisation of Australian manufacturing, and we're going to make sure that Australia faces up to the global challenges with optimism and energy and shapes them to our needs. But we're not going to do that by sacrificing the interests of the community, and particularly by sacrificing the interests of workers. I know that this is an approach very welcome in my community. I talked about comparative and competitive advantage. The truth is that the appetite for a future made in Australia, the energy, the entrepreneurialism, it exists. It exists right around our country in businesses, small, medium and large. And what it asks for, really, what it asks for from people in this place is that we unlock and unleash that energy and that potential. In my electorate of Fremantle, we have one of two national shipbuilding precincts. I've got industrial precincts with an emphasis on the new energy economy, batteries, energy system innovation, the production of graphene, high-purity alumina, robotics, all of these things that Australia shouldn't keep telling itself we can't be part of. You know, there are important national stories, but there can also be self-defeating stories. And the idea that the era in which manufacturing did depend on relatively low-skilled labour, and quite a lot of it, has passed. We are not in that era and haven't been in that era for some time. And so if a country of the same population as Australia, 25 million odd people, a country like Taiwan can go and be the leader in chip technology, why should Australia say to itself all we can do is be a country that focuses on primary production and the sort of earlier parts of the minerals and resources production process? We can do anything and everything, and the moment that we acknowledge that, the moment that we actually make that an object of our national story, we begin to move down that path to making it real. Those opposite, as I've said, are going to say no to this bill. That's not a surprise. I can't think that they've said yes to anything in the last 2 years. They say no to energy price relief, no to relief for households, no to the responsible management of a budget that's delivered 2 surpluses after 9 years in which there were eye-watering deficits as far as the eye could see, a tripling of the debt, doubling of the debt before COVID occurred, unbelievable waste in programs like JobKeeper that blew $20 billion up against the wall on companies whose profits rose through the pandemic. Just every kind of bad governance that you could possibly imagine. And now that they're no longer sitting behind the wheel as it just spun aimlessly around, they say no to every single thing we do to try and clean up that mess, to try and put Australia back on a sound budget position and try to guide Australia towards the future that Australians deserve, a high-quality future, an optimistic future, a future that does involve manufacturing, that does allow us to be a regional and, in some cases, global leader on the big challenges, on the net zero economy transformation, on the energy transformation, on tackling climate change. That's what people want. That's what this government is delivering. On the other side, it'd be nice if one of these days the the relentless negativity and the relentless hypocrisy makes way for something else, I won't hold my breath. The Albanese Labor government is going to get on with guiding a future made in Australia.